Member DeGolia? Or, I'm sorry. Oh, good. Member Tonelli?
That is great timing right
Right,
there.
perfect.
That's perfect.
Fisher.
Liaison Lewis?
You skipped Fisher. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Member Fisher, excuse me. Here. Liaison DeGolia. You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
And Lewis, yeah.
Yeah.
We have, 7 of 7 members plus one of our liaisons. Wonderful. Okay, any public comments? Do we have any members of the public here tonight? You hear none as members, of course? Okay, thank you. No members of the public, so we're gonna close public comment. Approval of minutes. So the minutes this time, you guys, if you haven't looked at them, it is worth spending 3 minutes to look at your minutes. Did any get printed out for the, I brought mine, you wanna look at mine, Edie?
I have a hard copy too.
Yeah. And what you wanna look at, Dee Dee, is the 2 paragraphs that talk about what we summarized on our comments.
Oh, no. It's more important you have. You take it. I can share it.
No, you look at yours, and you can look at mine.
Okay.
But I would focus on this paragraph and the next one, where it talks about what we agreed to with the architect. It's those 2. Because that's what we're gonna basically see now, and the only way to say that, that's not what I said. Oh, this is a different one. This
Oh,
is an
that
old one.
is?
Yeah, this is an old, this is December 7th.
Oh.
Let me look at that one. I think it's the fastest we've had minutes come back.
Well, Gordon did really good notes, and then the chair went through and helped us organize it so it actually
And Rose.
flowed really nicely.
Yes.
So much appreciated. And we did share those with the council when we did the monthly status report. So there's at least the
Oh, great.
conversation on architecture went to the council also.
Excellent.
Steve, are you asking us to look at the minutes and then comment
Yeah.
or not? That's what we felt.
We're gonna take a normal minutes vote, but I just wanted, this is a really important one, because these minutes really drive all the changes we're seeing today.
Yeah.
And any
I-
kind of further tweaks we make want to be in compliance with these minutes, more or less. And so I
Okay.
just thought it's worth reading that couple of paragraphs where we talk about budget and design questions. Just to make sure they're really deeply important.
Budget, there's no budget.
Or the budget, no, right there. So the budget, the very important stuff there, it'll make a huge difference in cost, yeah.
Better.
Yeah, aluminum versus wood, not masonry walls. The one thing we haven't gotten into yet is tile. How finicky we're gonna be about tile.
How much is to replace, how much to get rid of?
No, but there's all kinds of different tile that you can buy. There's multicolored tile that looks hand laid, and there's
Oh.
the concrete ones that look really,
They don't have any
Not so
materials
hand-laid.
for us yet, so it's not-
yeah. But, well, that'll come later, that'll come in value engineering. It doesn't drive architecture. Okay.
So-
Are we getting close to, are we about done? Didi, you good?
Everybody else can talk. I'm still-
Okay, so I think we go ahead. Does anybody have any comments to the minutes? I had some
I have
typos,
a-
which I sent to Joe. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
What about the council chambers being the least resolved,
Yeah.
inline or cantered?
And so today, what that was left for is the WRNS
Yeah.
has presented a couple of options
Yeah.
on council, and then what we know is we didn't have a solid direction. We had some concepts that we liked more than others, but we weren't sure. So today, our goal is to firm up those open items.
It seemed to me that the preference was for a cantered.
I didn't hear that last week. Did anybody feel that there was a strong preference last week for cantered? I thought people were open either way. There were some people that had a strong preference for cantered.
I have a strong
I
preference.
Yes, you definitely
I
did.
didn't
I
vote
did.
for inline. I voted for
You
Canada.
did. Did anybody want to keep it alive, or is it just cantered? Did anybody say, let's look at both?
I don't know, usually.
Yeah, I don't think we voted.
I think it had to do with how flat the roof was on the police department.
So this isn't how we feel today, but last time,
Right.
did we get
They
to
did.
it clear we wanted cantered?
Yes.
There were three options
Yeah.
presented,
Yeah.
only one of those options has a straight line
Yeah.
council chambers in that option, but if their option was taken off and you settled on the other two, which both had the canted council chambers.
Yeah.
Do you
There's a
guys
lot
feel
of-
the same? Does anybody have a problem removing the inline as of last week? No? Okay, so we're gonna adjust the minutes,
No, it's just, I don't have a problem with it, excuse me.
okay,
But I was out walking the site last week and really kind of looking at the plan and some of the landmarks of where the building will be. And if you go out and take a look at the rear of the council chambers being near the two oak trees there, at least the, what would that be, the west corner of it, or the west end of it, there's not a lot of difference between it being cantered and being straight and its relationship to this building. I mean, it kind of looks like it in the plans, but if you get out there and take a look and kind of place yourself where this would be, and I'm not saying one way or the other, but I'm saying that the difference is more minor than it looks in the drawings, I think.
okay. But all I'm saying is, as of last, just in terms of the minutes from the last meeting, should we say that we decided to go with cantered? Or should we just leave it the way it's written, that it was left open?
I think it was left open.
Is it okay to leave it open?
Yeah.
And
I
then
disagree with-
we'll decide it today.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Okay, so as per the minutes, we're gonna leave it open.
Right.
And then we're just with those typos fixed, and then today we will make our decision on cantered or open. So, all right, for the minute, so do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Thank you, in a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Thank you. All right, good. Done. All right, that's done. The design, so staff is gonna update us and, WRNS on the revised drawings. And then we're
Right.
gonna,
So,
yes.
as I noted, we did share with the city council in our monthly update on the Civic Center project, the commentary, the thoughts that the task or the committee had on the architecture, and so essentially what's in the minutes we brought forward. The one thing I want to point out that's in the report that we did share with the council is following last, I guess it was our last meeting, we did have kind of an impromptu conversation as staff and consultants, just trying to figure out order of magnitude of where we are on budget. We have not done new cost estimating on it. Part of that is Mac 5 will do that when we finish schematic design. That's in there, kind of the next time to do that. But we did ask Paul to think about kind of rough order of magnitude, what would be shifting. And his sense is that with the architectural changes we've done, it's probably about a 10% increase over the 10% increase that were over the original budget. So that's one of the things we wanted to make sure the council understood, is that, you know, we're off working on architecture and following the direction, but it does have budget implications. And so we're going to go through, and assuming we find closure today on architecture and kind of hitting much closer to the mark, is I really want to go through and get WRNS to finish up schematic design, because then I can get Paul to go through and do the cost estimating, so we actually can have real numbers instead of rough order of magnitude guesstimate. But that was the one thing we did put in that was different than in the minutes, because that happened after the meeting, but I thought was important for you to know what we're up to.
On that item, we could ask Paul, when he does that, if he comes in 10% higher, we could request now that he suggests value engineering. to bring
Absolutely.
that back down, right? We can ask that now and not wait another meeting when he
Exactly.
comes back with it.
Well, that's, Paul, your thoughts?
Yes, we could make some recommendations on where to cut, but I think that those recommendations have to get weighed in the context of the design of the building and what our priorities are.
Right.
And I think some of the conversation was that a lot of these things are interconnected, that if there are things about sustainable features that we want to add to the building if the money's there, that decisions need to be made now about how that influences the mechanical system or operable windows or PV. So we can make some suggestions, but I think as we get to the point of WRNS putting together the narrative that goes along with the design drawings, that we'll want to clearly call out the distinctions between what should be part of the base project and what's an add-on.
Additionally, if you come back and say, gee, Spanish style is a lot more expensive than a hybrid or modern, then you could say, you can bring this
Revert
budget
back
down
to-
by getting rid of the slope tile roof and going to a flat roof, or going to a zinc roof, or, I mean, there are other suggestions you could make that the council can then, not this group,
Right.
the council can then decide if they're worth the trade-off or not.
And that's kind of what I look as the balancing act, is there's the budget that was put out there. There was the desires for how green the building is.
Right.
And then there's the architectural desires, and they're all kind of balancing, and right now, they're not. And part of this is, do we want to reset the balance, which is, does the budget grow bigger? Do we go and take things out of the program?
Right.
And really, at the end of the day, it's gonna be a council discussion of policy
Right.
and priorities on it.
But it would be nice to have those
Some
pieces
insights of,
to discuss, so we can make a recommendation to council and they
Right.
can make their decision.
I might make a suggestion that if you think it's coming back at another $4 million plus, that you get a lot of suggestions for us, because there'll be people in the community that are gonna go, this thing's out of control.
Agreed.
yeah.
Right? So we need to have as many suggestions as possible, and alt lists. I don't care if there's things we can do later if we have the money, but we've gotta keep this thing in budget.
Yeah.
And so I think our strategy will be to meet with WRNS one-on-one and talk about, if we lop this off, what are the consequences? I think that VE is usually done with a scalpel, but some of this may take a machete.
Yeah,
I think we may need a machete.
or a hatchet, or an axe.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
But
I
I
think
wanted to put that out there, is that
Yeah.
we're trying,
We just
kinda
want to
get-
think a couple
Yeah.
meetings ahead is all. What I'm pushing for is come back with the information that will allow this group to make an informed recommendation to council.
right,
Because I think everybody wants to get this back to council, and so we don't have to do okay, now can we have, okay, it's 10% over, now can you go back and tell us about value engineering?
right.
Be nice to have those tools in hand. Okay, great. Do we go to the
So-
presentation now? Is that?
Yeah, so I would say from the council meeting, as the council did have the report, which included an update of where we've been on architecture, we included some of the elevations in there, where we've been on some of the green features, which is a little bit that we put it on hold as we're trying to figure out where we are schematic design on some of the architecture pieces. Not a lot of conversation at the council.
No, there wasn't. There was general support and expressions of nice work by the committee in terms of getting where we are today, nice work by WRNS putting the package together, but not a lot of detailed conversation about the design itself. But they, I think, had expressed some concerns with respect to the fundraising component of stuff as well. We need those two to match,
Yeah.
as Joe was just mentioning. Mayor, do you have anything in addition to add?
Yeah, so what I took away from the council meeting, tremendous support for the project, 100% unanimous support from council to keep this moving ahead. Great gratitude for the committee. Thank you, committee, so much for all your hard work, and obviously concerns about fundraising, but very supportive of the direction that we're going in, the traditional look, and wanting to reinforce that, and obviously concerned about budget, but understand that we need to design something that is going to be a pride of Atherton, and something that will be stunning and long-lasting and functional for our town government. So, overall, council very much in support.
So with that, I will throw it to John.
Good to see everyone. We're probably going to just dive in like we've done in the past to the comments that we've had, and really just want to look at big picture items here, I think. So rather than focusing on responses necessarily, it might make more sense to just focus on the comments, and then the responses will be in the drawings.
Great.
So let's come back around to that. So just kind of quickly to go through these, this page here deals with the architecture of both the admin and the police building. One comment we heard here, the first one was arch glass entry, being pretty important, roughly 10 to 14 feet high. Next one was Oaks courtyard. We combined a few in this row here, considering fountain or garden in that front courtyard end. There was a discussion about omitting the trellis that was previously shown out that felt a little too suggested. There was the one-story shed mass
you'll see a couple variations on how that may work in the plans here. Then moving on, then the admin upper story, a lot of comments on this one. There was that, if you remember, an inset kind of relief on that upper story of windows. It still felt maybe in some of the options a little too similar to what was going on downstairs. So the thought was to open that up with a little bit of light. We'll show a couple variations on that. And then the roof form. This is one we kind of kept alive in two options. I think if you recall previously, the police building, we had a hip roof, but we've also been looking at the flat roof, which could have potential cost savings and allow for more PV on the project. So both options will be presented in option 1 and 2 today. The second page here.
Steve,
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time hearing him.
Maybe you can pull that microphone over right by, you pull it, see this one on the table? Maybe we can get it right by you.
Thank you.
I'll speak up a little bit too, towards your general direction, Elizabeth. So the second sheet here, council chamber comments. We heard
Just
that
before we go to that, is there something missing from the bottom of the Fair Oaks?
That's my bad. The Fair Oaks we combined all into that one.
Oh, okay.
So you're not missing anything. I just didn't get that out of there. The council chamber entry, we heard it seemed to be working better on the south side of the building where it's addressing the building we're in now more directly. And also we did hear about the rotating the chamber kind of being the general preference. Although hearing today it doesn't necessarily have to be. We'll stay tuned. Council chamber flexibility. This was a good discussion here actually, that openness and flexibility are really great for the use of the space, but they may detract a little bit from the civic nature of how the building reads. So we'll show a couple options that I think could allow for both. And then lastly here, just with the massing and the facades, I think overall we were hearing that the council chamber probably wants to feel more traditional, which in some ways might be a bookend approach. We have council chamber and admin building both feeling relatively traditional, with police a little more in flux in between, whether it's hybrid or traditional. So then just moving along, this is just the site plan. So I'll go through each option from site plan to council chamber, and then just sort of generally on the architecture, hitting those big items. So the site plan here, you can see, notice the canted council chamber plan. You can also pick up in the massing, there's a strong symmetrical response within the council chamber that borrows a lot from this building right now. Everything's on axis here at dead center, with 2 hip roof wings on the building, which again is very much in keeping with the building.
And the doors are dead center.
Doors are dead center.
Right.
Yeah, it's critical for that scheme. Thanks.
Is the one with that looks like a church entrance on the council, is that a canted? That's canted?
Yes. Yeah, actually both options are shown canted.
He's on page 5 so far, Elizabeth, just so you know.
And I'll jump to 6
I don't
here.
think I got all pages.
She doesn't have those.
Oh,
Those
okay.
are handed out.
I don't have those. I only have 2 pages.
We're on page 6 now. I think we're on the
It's,
page around.
option 1, so Elizabeth, it's the option that is symmetrical with canted. It has 2 low-story wings and a portico on the left there. So
Yeah.
the council chamber here, you can see this borrows very heavily from the building we're in now. Actually, proportionally, it's quite similar. But you do pick up a couple differences here. So we implemented a loggia on this door, this port-facing facade, and we also have an open portico at the entry. It's very much, again, like this. Now, this has some drawbacks, and we'll look at another option that I think will leave some discussion for you guys to kind of bounce around. But what's really great about this, you can imagine opportunities for thickening that wall again, and kind of getting that traditional feel. We know we can't do it everywhere, but this would be a great opportunity to pass through this threshold into the building, so we could have a really nice sense of shadow and light. Also, you could play with that opening on either side. So those could be open air, just basically windows without glazing, which I think could be really nice, again, for sort of enlivening that space and creating kind of a really traditional feeling threshold. These, lots of variation here. I mean, this is one way to do it, but one thing we thought was pretty interesting about this is, could you even do insets within the wall? Like maybe there's actual tile within the inset, kind of revealing a little more texture, a little more color within kind of the skin of the building. Could be a great opportunity. And then are there ways that the roof can be really expressive, right, of the structure again? So we know wood is a tough one to maintain, especially when it's getting beat down on with the sun and the rain. But in a condition like this, where it's got roof cover underneath, you might be able to do that in a way that's a little easier to maintain. So express wood structure here, potentially wood soffit. And maybe the opportunity on this one, I know the door, we talked about going with glazing, but there might be the opportunity that you could look at a door that had more wood, because it is in fact inset in this portico here. So in the plan, you can see here on the left side, this is a great, actually really great space here, the loggia. You can imagine on a nicer night like tonight, having the sliding glass doors on the side of the council chamber, you could literally open those up and have an indoor-outdoor type of experience. That'd be pretty phenomenal. And yeah, that kind of axial entry point there. So the idea is much like this, where you would enter into the room and really get a strong sense of the structure, and be right on target with the council chamber seating then at the far side. This one, I think, just to quickly hit on some of the details in terms of the stats. This was about 11 feet away from the water line, whereas I think in the next option you'll see it actually gets a little bit tighter in there. So then just the architecture overall, the two views here. So top view we're looking at is the Fair Oaks view, and bottom view is the Civic Court view, roughly from where we're at right now, just a little bit out on the left of this building. So picking up on the comments from last time, I'll start from the top. So on Fair Oaks, you can see the glazed door and an arched entry door. We looked at, I think, 245 Lytton, kind of as a similar precedent where an arched entry was used. The other comment was about removing the shed that was out front. But there were also comments, if you remember previously, we had an expressive stair that I think some people did take pretty nicely to. So one thought here was, well, you could have a slight projection, a matter of a few feet from the building, that still allows for that program to kind of hold its place there, but really also lets you express that stair through the facade. The upper story, you can see we've added a lot more glazing. Would have a spandrel panel across the top at the offices there, just for realistic sense of the structure. But we could really try to maximize it over the lobby and get a lot of daylight in there. And from the north, that's going to be a really high quality balanced light coming into the space. Well, this was a meager suggestion at a Fountain D. I don't know, where we end up on that yet. But the idea that this scheme could also, if it's a larger open space like that, could in theory have a really great, you can imagine this fountain kind of occupying that space, and it brings an acoustic relief and also a place to be. So really a great designator for entry there. On the Civic Court side of the facade, so just kind of continuing from where we were at the council chamber, you can see also the integration of a loggia or a portico here at the entry, very similar to what we were doing at the council chamber. And this is actually, from a solar perspective, a pretty smart move. I think it helps to provide shading at some of those entries, both for the council chamber and at the entryway there. Again, trying to get a lot of light though up into the high portion of the lobby where it can really do most of its work. So the higher it enters, the more it fills the space. So we do look at a little higher ratio of glazing at that lobby entrance there. We did hear the comments about the police. I didn't put this in the list, now that I think about it, but we did hear the comments, no balconies. And so in this option, actually what we do is we take the shed roof, a low shed roof, which kind of brings that tile texture a little closer down to a human scale. And we just kind of run that up to what would be at about 4.5, 5 feet in section at the police there. And what that could do is actually, fitness is planned currently on the other side of that corridor. So that could actually be a great way to borrow light and bring it into that fitness space. But it takes away that idea of a balcony terrace. So I think that hits the majority of the fine points here. I'm going to keep moving on to option 2 here. So in option 2, what we did was we looked at flat roof in lieu of the hip, and we'll be able to come back and we can kind of compare and contrast these on the boards after the fact. But yeah, again, you can see here on the site plan, really taking advantage of that flat roof. It's the best place on site to get PV on a building, and so this really tries to take advantage of that. From the council chamber perspective, you can see here, this is somewhat similar to what we had on option 2 previously. It goes with the gabled roof rather than a hip. It's a little asymmetrical in the way its facade resonates. We did hear the comment that sliders might be a little less civic in terms of how they read on the exterior of the building. So this actually takes a look at how swinging doors, French doors, could be utilized to open up the space but still keep a traditional feel and kind of a human scale. And that being said, we did recognize the need for shade again and solar control. So this option would actually try to look to integrate a trellis in some way to balance out the shading on that opening. In terms of distances, they're both relatively similar because they both kind of follow that same canted plan and put the entry again on the south side. This one was a little bit tighter in terms of its relationship to the water line at about 5 feet away from that. I do think that there's some flexing that could happen in the plan if that's something we're very sensitive to, that we could try to sneak that a little closer or further away. And then to the architecture here, at the Fair Oaks side, so you can see a large deep arch here, a little bit deeper in terms of the entry, glazed door, and A couple of the things you may pick up on here too is a balance of a new material, or the introduction of a new material along with the plaster. We're looking at this as potentially could be stone or even a precast. One of the great opportunities on option one was that low roof coming down gave us an opportunity to really brighten up the texture, the color of the building. Without that, in the flat roof option, we wanted something that could still bring that, right, and bring a little bit of variety down there at the ground plane. And so the idea is, could you integrate it maybe as bookends, even something that ties the two buildings together between the library and town hall, and then again at the corner, for instance, of Fair Oaks there at Ashfield, and potentially here at the Fair Oaks courtyard as well, something that kind of just provides a backstop for the courtyard space that could scale it down a little more for people sitting in that area. Also in this one, we try to look at the integration of trees potentially in the courtyard. I think that's been a comment that there was actually a good desire to have trees out in the courtyard space as well. We're looking here at what would be metal frame windows, is a larger openings on the upper story. The stair is not as expressed, although it is telegraphed in the centralized window locations here at the Fair Oaks Court. And then on the Civic Court entry, you can see the flat roof. What we're looking at is actually in keeping with the trellis at the council chamber. Is there a way to keep a trellis then on that upper story again? Recognizing that that's going to be south and westerly sun, so probably our most intense exposure. This is actually indicating where the stair would be, so that stair actually helps. We pulled the stair forward in this option, which kind of helps with that idea of, okay, if the balconies go away, what program can we entertain that would actually close off that second story space? And it actually provides a kind of a backstop for the police building right before it transitions into the council chamber. So yeah, that gives a sense of it. And then this, we can come back to that. I think if we want to focus just on the architecture and maybe comments and discussion there first.
I think we just go around the table again with, we spend a few minutes and ask questions. And if people aren't ready, we can just go if people are ready. So we have a strong feeling.
Okay.
Clyde?
Yeah, sure.
Yep.
I think,
We're all doing this on the fly, so it's
Yeah.
all fresh and yeah.
okay, well, congratulations to the group. I think it's really moving along really nicely. My comment on option one, I like both options. Option one, what concerns me about the council chambers is there's a lot of expensive, rather, I don't want to say dead space, but space that doesn't have a lot of utility, and it's expensive space. So as you come in through the entry, you have this, as you pointed out, a nice arch to take you into the space, which is I really like. However, what you end up with is sort of this, I don't know what the dimensions would be, but it looks like it's about 10 or 12 feet deep, and the whole width of the council chamber, that's sort of, it's open space that doesn't seem to have a lot of use. And even more so on the south elevation of the council chambers, where you have the open space there. Lovely space, but it looks like it would be very costly and not a lot of utility. So that was other than that though, it was good. In terms of option two, I had one question on option two. One of the things we had talked about was the possibility of, if there was a large meeting, of expanding the council chambers in such a way that if there was an overflow group, it would spill out into the entry vestibule. So is that what's happening here with these 3 pairs of doors?
Yeah, the idea is you could, in theory, open that space up. If you wanted to maximize that, I'd suggest more doors.
Yeah.
Just the 3.
Okay. Oh, I think that's something that we should discuss. In terms of the flat roof versus the pitched roof, I think as we heard last week from Paul, the flat roof is going to be less expensive. I don't think that there's a real detriment to the flat roof option. I think it's quite attractive. The only suggestion might be to try and do more with that little staircase element that you've got coming out there. I think that could be a very attractive architectural feature. I'm not quite sure what it needs. Some parapet treatment, a roof on it or something, but projecting out, stepping back, but it needs, I think, a little bit more. I think it's, I really like option two quite a lot.
Okay, who would like to go next? I'll go next. Okay. So my big question is, could you put the option 1 council chambers on the option 2 plan? So can that lovely council chambers in the left over there with the arcade, can that go on the flat roofed option? Because the things I liked about option 2 are the front door of the whole building is more prominent somehow. It's got a little more gravitas. It just feels a little more interesting.
The front door of the council
For the Fair Oaks front door, I like, it's got more chutzpah than the other one does. I think the window system is more, almost more traditional than the one on option 1. The option 2 window system is kind of cooler than the one on option 1. It just felt more like what it really is. It's an office space. I don't know. But the only thing I really didn't like about option 2 was the rear treatment of the council chambers and all that wood. It didn't feel to me great. But I didn't know if you could marry it with the option 1 council chambers instead.
So that's a great question. We asked ourselves that a lot. But what's really critical about the council chamber here, right? And this is the portico loggia fest.
Yeah.
This is call it what it is, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have a sound lock because we're struggling with, can you give a council chamber sound lock, a portico, and still not chew up all of that real estate in front of the building? You know, it really starts to grow this way. So we gave up the sound lock in this. Doesn't mean it's
What's a sound lock? What does that mean?
It's basically an lobby space that allows you to walk. So for example, when
You mean on that side?
Yeah, right. So this
where the nano doors are.
Right here, we pulled the door back of the council chamber inboard to allow for this depth and this portico that we heard would be something.
But it does face away from the train.
Yeah, it faces towards, it faces this way, the train is here, so it faces, more towards this building, right? And that, we wanted to bring that to your attention, that, that's the difference between this plan and.
But you could put doors out there.
You could, but you lose a portico. So it's not, the thought.
No,
was-
but the portico, there's not gonna be any noise there. It's inside the side portico, the arcade. When you say the portico, you mean the arcade?
Yeah, this, we're
Oh,
saying.
that portico.
This right here, yeah, not this one.
But you could stick doors in that opening.
You could put doors there.
You could fenestrate that, right?
Then it would be more like this, right? Where you have a door flush on it, there's no depth, there's no.
Oh, but it could look like the one on the back of the, down there. It could look like that.
Yeah, you could get a little depth to it, there's no portico. It's either portico or, it's like you got a lobby or you don't.
I'm not so sure, because that wall is 2 feet deep.
Yeah, so the wall elevation, I think matches.
It's almost 3 feet deep, that wall. You could stick the door back in at 2 feet and still have a foot behind it. It would look great.
You could do this, right? You could
Can
do-
I ask a question?
It should be a little entry patio.
Yeah.
It's not a full.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
space.
What you guys are talking about, the portico thing?
Mhm.
So the elevation, I don't have an interior design visual. Do you guys have an interior design visual of the council chambers?
We have a floor plan.
Kind of an overview.
You have a floor plan?
Yeah.
And is it I don't have the floor plan, so I'm just looking at the council chambers with the portico. And it looks to me like what Clive said, that it's a width that is, 10 feet wide, and then the length of the building. And if that's just all open space, so the actual width of the council chambers is to this tall elevation, and then the 2 side buildings, the 2 side wings are nothing. They're what are they?
The one on the right-hand side, Elizabeth, is the restrooms and the support rooms for the council chambers. And then on the right-hand side is a covered area where the glass wall would be, so it'd be shaded, kind of enclosed somewhat to cut down on some of the sun.
Yeah. So the other thing that I've been hearing is the reason for this south-facing area to be shaded from the sun. We should be thinking of really putting solar panels along this side. I think Valerie Gardner brought that up at the council meeting the other night, and I thought, she's right. This is where we're going to get the most sun, so that should be considered. But the wall to the council chambers does not extend out into here. This is much wider than the portico that I was envisioning when we were talking about doing something like that. And I kind of agree with Clive. that it looks like it's expensive, wasted space. And what Steve was saying about the arch front entrance on the Fair Oaks side, I think the reason that you were saying that it gives it more gravitas on the on one or something, every time I look at this front elevation, I just go, why? What's wrong? What really is? It never feels right to me. And for one reason, the front door is always drawn in the shadow of the giant, bulky building that is the admin building, and then the other wing just doesn't seem to fit anywhere. And it seems lopsided. It doesn't seem to me. I know this is saying this late in the game, and people aren't going to like what I say, but I think the front elevation just has no style. It's got this giant admin wing on it, and then the recessed front door, and then it doesn't even match the PD. The PD windows don't ever seem to line up or match, in the second elevation, you have to put a little tree there to kind of hide it just doesn't have any architectural style to me. So that's one thing that just kind of continues, no matter what we do with the skin of the building and the fenestration, that always seems to not feel balanced or like good architecture from the front. So that's my feeling about it.
Do these windows on the second floor match up with what's going on inside office-wise? I mean, with respect to,
Yeah, I mean, and there is, in terms of the planning, we are still working.
right, because I know that's hard to do and try to make a regular, spacing.
Well, part of what we're still figuring out is how much is hard wall office versus how much is open office upstairs and downstairs.
Okay.
But there is a sensitivity to the cadence, and trying to keep that
Right.
the right scale.
Making it all work, I agree.
All right, so why don't we keep going? Who would like to go next? Rose, are you ready?
Yeah, I guess. I think I agree with almost some of what Clive says and some of what Steve says. I like the visual look of the chambers of option 1 better. My question is, what's the seating for each option?
It was 80 seats in option 1 and 84 in option 2.
That's all. It's the only increase by 4 seats in option 2, and it looks like a much bigger space. So what?
Yeah, I think there's a little extra space in the back there. It's probably not. I'm not taking that seating space, but that's
right.
Just visually, that seems like that's probably the biggest discrepancy.
One's longer, one's squarer.
Yeah.
Is that why?
Right.
Okay. And so this loggia is really an outdoor space.
Yeah.
It's outdoors. And it has no soundproofing features at all. I mean, but option 2 does?
Well, so it would be behind glazing, and that gives you one opportunity for tuning the sound, whether it's in the selection of the glazing. There's actually glass now that can be used to help treat acoustics. You can gasket the doors. And actually those arches, just the nature of that geometry, will provide some relief acoustically as well, and shielding some of that and reverberating some of that.
Which one is which option provides the most soundproofing?
I would venture to guess that option 1 is probably going to be a little more acoustically contained than option 2.
Okay. I think we're definitely going in the right direction. There is probably something missing, and I can't, on the front elevation, I can't pinpoint it yet. Sometimes less is more too. If we start adding a lot of things in here, number one, it increases the cost, but number 2, it starts to lose something. I, on the other hand, like the inset of the doors on Fair Oaks. I think it adds just a little bit more character and richness, but I can see where it can appear dark. What Elizabeth said, when it's inset too much. And so maybe you need to work on that in terms of how much light there really is, and maybe the size of the arch, and all of that. How to integrate you know, the flat roof and the chambers is still a challenge, but I would like to see it, as Steve voiced, maybe placing option 1 chamber on option 2 elevation in the back, and see if that's even doable, and see how it meets, because I still prefer the look and elevation of option 1 of the chambers, and that seems to be, you know, important. You know, but all in all, I kind of agree with what Paul said, that I think that canting it, you know, the issue of canting this is not going to make much of a difference, and I don't know if that's going to impact cost in building this. I think it's so minimal, and I don't think people are going to really see the nuance of this in real life, in real time. And I've walked that too, Paul, and I've tried to look at that, and I kind of came to that agreement. But if that's something that people prefer and think it's worth canting, you know, that I'm not going to say that it's a terrible decision. Other than that, you know, I think my strong preference still is for option 1, but maybe option 2, flat roof, and see how that looks with chambers 1. That's it.
Gary, do you want?
Sure, yeah, so I'm gonna beat a dead horse, right? I like the option 1 council chamber, and I like the, but I wonder if you could make it just a little bit shorter, and you know, bring the council chamber out so you didn't have 5 arches, maybe 4. Because it does
Yeah.
like there's a lot of wasted space there.
Agreed.
I like the way that the roof wraps around from the council chambers into the police department. I think that second roof is really pretty, and I actually like the 3 portals that go into the entrance there in the back. So I like the back of this one a lot, and I love the way you guys incorporated the solar and made it a little modern, touching the old mission style. I agree with Elizabeth though. In the front, there's just something that just feels a little bit not exactly right about that entranceway. But yeah, I think it's getting closer and closer. But I do like the entranceway that's more inset. I think that has it's a little more dramatic. And I'm not even sure if you can even do something that mimics what you did in the back there, maybe 2 or 3 of those portals, just to bring a little more depth and weight to that entrance area.
You might even carry the arches up to the second floor. And have an arcade up on the second floor. You know, this treatment here and here might carry over here as just a window treatment, just arched windows on the second.
Council chambers?
Yeah, just this colonnade and this arch look might carry itself to the front of the building, up on the second floor. And those windows, just big arched windows.
That's cool.
Might be really pretty.
But I do like it feels kind of residential. I mean, it doesn't feel like it's a big commercial building anymore.
I can speak if you want.
Would you, yeah, please.
Sure, okay. I'm not an architect, as you all know, but anyway, I really favor option 1. I think it's fine to have a second story look professional, even though the building, I think, would be very comfortable in the neighborhood. I think, you know, the people that live here are comfortable with the idea that it's a place of business. I really like the front door in option 2. If you can put that option 2 front door in with option 1 on the Fair Oaks side, I like that a lot. I think, of course, though, everything needs dramatic details, but at this point, it's not appropriate to have those, is it? Is that why it looks so simple right now? Because we're just trying to get the box in the right place, the right kind of roof.
Right, doors,
Okay.
roofs.
Right,
entry.
details come later, right? Okay, so all the pretty stuff comes later. I like the back area, the courtyard, and I do like the 2 roofs. I love the arched opening with the glass doors behind it, because I keep hearing that people want multi-use space, and I think that would be a very useful indoor-outdoor space. So to me, it's a great opportunity to offer the community the option of using that space, because there's so much indoor-outdoor space. The back, I like the overall architecture of option 1 for the council chambers, but to me, and I'm not an architect, it looks like there's just nothing going on the upper part of that back wall facing this council chamber. Just a little teeny window. It seems like there should be more going on there, but that's just me. Option two, what I don't like is I think the way you moved the stairway there and kind of boxed it in, that's a little bit, doesn't feel right to me. And I really prefer the archways to the trellis in option two. And I like the treatment of the windows in option one. I think it looks professional, but that's just me.
Okay, who'd like to go next? We're down to Paul and Edie.
Oh. I don't have a lot to add, other than my question was the same as Steve's about using the council chamber in option one. I think you really nailed that architecturally and kind of blended a lot of the things we've been talking about. I saw that and I was like, wow, that's it. And again, the same question as Steve, combining that with the functionality of option two and the flat roof in the police department. And I was just wondering if we talked about the seating capacity difference in the two council chambers. Is there any guess as to if there's a square footage difference at all, or?
I think option two is going to be a slightly bigger council chamber option.
So, Adam, I noticed you drawing up there. So, to keep the design feature of the archway and widen the council chambers and kind of lessen that dead space, is that something that's possible to do, or something that makes sense?
I think we can do it. It's going to be just we're up against a pretty tough line right here. This pathway, right, which is really trying to avoid these two conifers. And there's a point at which, things are going to kind of squish around a little bit. We'll have to look at it. Hard to say right here that it can be done. But one thing, just to get clarity on that comment, is when we hear the preference for this option for the council chamber, right? And can you take that and move it to this option? Which is the flat roof option, right?
Yeah.
A couple critical things are attached to the first council chamber. One is, it really is an extension that Gary picked up on it of that entrance to the admin building, right? So that one roof kind of drives all the way and then ties into that. If we take that off and put it here, because this is a very different plan, right? The stairs kind of flipped. I guess the question is that what the committee is saying they also like, or is it everything from here over?
For me, it was the cost savings of the flat roof on the PD.
So
It was really, can you have the Spanish-style traditional building with a flat roof PD in the middle?
So let me ask you,
yeah.
Because when I looked at this the first time, I thought that was a flat roof until I looked at the original floor plan that then showed it delta. Because the way it's drawn, you really can't see that it's pitched. Just slightly at that corner you can pick it. But I read it as a flat roof because it picks the same detail. And so it really could you just make that the flat roof element?
Yeah, because I saw this as a flat roof too.
You could still
That
carry
looks
that
like- yeah,
low
it does.
roof that comes along
Yeah.
the arcade, could go all the way back, and you just have a flat roof at the second floor.
Right, so that's a clear itself, but I think there'll be kind of a design
Right.
problem.
Transition point.
By flipping around there, which is something I think we can work around, that stair tower, it's going to be worked on. But, just for clarity, this break in elevation, the break in that plane, bringing the red tile closer to the courtyard, which is down about lower level, and how it then integrates into the loggia that leads into that, is what people are starting to gravitate towards.
It's really lovely.
Hearing that clearly. It's very good. It's one of that's the same.
Good architecture.
Not like cut that and move that, because that's, but it gives us something to at least consider.
It also unites it. You really were inspired to unite that loggia to the police department, to the admin, because it brings the whole thing together.
Yeah.
So if I can ask for clarification, so I was interested. I think somebody said, bring the interior out a little bit, if I understood what Gary was saying, but don't change.
Right,
I
exactly.
think you were thinking about changing the exterior dimension.
No, keep the
That wasn't
exterior
what
the
I
same.
thought. I thought they were saying, bring the interior wall out.
So,
Is that what you were?
Well, it'll
Yeah.
become asymmetric. That's
Keep
not
the
right.
footprint the same, but
Right.
just move that wall into the portico a little bit, and
Okay.
keep the design feature of the arches. Like you were drawing up there.
So this line here, right, you could gain more interior space by doing that, right? By pulling this out, which I think would give a better proportion of the portico, right, to the rest of the building. You gain a better,
You could shorten the chambers too.
you could shorten a little bit too, which might help kind of get a better proportion overall. We may look at, looking at how to get a better sound, as John was saying accurately, from an acoustic standpoint, it's really very, very important, because we don't want to necessarily replicate this, which is you open the front door and we can't hear what you're saying. So we do want to look at that, but the fact that this is pointing the opposite way will help somewhat.
And the center lines of the doors do not, I must ask the question, they don't line up, they're off, you can see it on the plan.
Right now they do.
They don't look like if you look at that plan,
I think the intent, and just to clarify, is that this front door, right, lines up with the center of the chamber.
no, I didn't mean that, I meant with the existing town hall.
No.
No.
They don't line up, yeah, yeah. So if you widen that town hall chamber and you move the door left, it's not the new center, it doesn't matter.
Well, you know what, I might.
It doesn't hurt anything.
We might suggest one thing is, one, you could, or you might say that, this is very typical in a lot of traditional buildings, that, you're centered on your ridge beam, right, which is always kind of nice to walk through the building, and you see the ridge beam running right down and everything goes, but you might just have the roof continue a little farther. So you have a side aisle or a saddlebag.
Or you may move the center line, you just may move everything over, have a wider council chamber.
And that play.
That's what I think you should do.
That play will be right here, is really understanding that symmetry.
Yeah.
And no one's gonna read the difference in depth of the arcade versus the restroom side. No one's gonna read that.
So it might mean that.
If they're 5 feet off, no one's gonna notice.
It might mean.
Right.
Yeah.
That'd be a better use. And to shorten it like what Gary was saying, instead of 5 arches, 4 arches. And can I just ask one more time?
You don't wanna comment?
Steve?
Okay, yeah.
Can
Go
I
ahead,
ask-
Elizabeth.
can
We
I
still have
ask-
to get to Dee Dee though, she hadn't had a shot yet. But go
Okay.
ahead. Okay, Dee Dee, go ahead.
So, I think we're hearing clearly that everybody likes council chambers #1 with a few modifications. One thing on the back door, whatever we're calling it, was that the south something side. I like the way that we have indented, come out a little bit and indented, it gives some perspective to that of the building, because I think in the second one it's just too flat.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we're gonna mess with that, I'd love to see us keep some kind of perspective there. A question about what kind of doors are planned for under the arches?
The sliding glass is what we've been looking at in this case. There's nothing to say you couldn't look at swing doors as
Okay,
well.
I'm guessing it could be a budget issue. Am I
Yes.
wrong? I've been
Yeah,
told-
doing a series of French doors versus a giant sliding door
Yes.
is not different structurally cost-wise.
Well, I think we need to be aware of that.
Yeah.
I think either one or both could be very nice, especially with the arches out in front that will, break it up.
Kind of mask it a little bit.
Well, one big option worth putting on the table, Dee Dee, is that interior nano door that's against the blue line
Yeah.
could completely go away.
Yes,
And the doors could be in the arcade.
correct.
That's the other option, and you would just have a big kind of empty space to the left that's kind of indoors.
And then we might not
But
have
it's-
so much wasted space.
Well, it's an architectural detail, and then how do you use it? The one thing that we'll have to be careful in that arcade is it will be echoey. If it's an outdoor space, but it'll be very echoey. It won't have any textiles, and we'll have to think about sound in there.
I think the committee needs to kind of think about exactly that, but also, is there, if you push this wall here, which I think is a great idea, right? And you reduce the amount of outdoor patio space, which Eloge really is about setting up, is this indoor-outdoor relationship. And if you could have, French doors, right, that lead out to something very, very narrow, not occupiable, or barely occupiable. Or you could go with sliding glass, there's many options. And as John was kind of saying earlier, if you put the glass line here, right, we might recommend that you really start to thicken that up. Because that depth in that wall is what I think I'm hearing the committee really like, which is exaggerated here. But when we start to put the enclosure line there, and we lose that patio, it starts to get very thin. You can just worry about that depth.
But isn't the purpose of the patio community space?
Yeah,
Shared space.
but we're hearing two things. We're hearing patio's great, we're also hearing a thought just now on the floor was, let's lose that patio and move those doors.
Well, no, it's just an option. I'm not recommending it. I'm just saying there's pushing and shoving. How big an arcade do you want to have? What's it going to get used for? Is it a transitional space or a use space?
Right.
are we cost constrained, so the nano doors are an extra $100,000 over 4 pairs of
Right.
French doors?
Focus and French doors could be a wonderful value.
Yeah, it's just one of those, like, what are you gonna do with the space? But that's where the push and shove will happen.
Right,
Yeah.
but the idea is the same, which is you have the interior council chamber, you have a patio space, a loggia space, which could be used for other events besides council meetings, right?
Mhm.
You wanna open that up, it's protected from the sun, it's keeping that glass line in. And it gives really wonderful depth on that west.
Well, you've drawn it deep enough to put tables in for a dinner.
Absolutely.
If, if we make it narrower, it's just gonna be a
Dead
vestibule.
Right.
It's-
It'll become
Like a
non-usable.
passageway.
It'll just be a thing
Yeah.
you stand under in the rain.
Right.
But when you walk
Yeah.
in here, you walk through.
Smoking alcove.
Right.
Nah.
It'll be, yeah.
Very similar to
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Similar to the entrance experience of
So you
walking into
think
this
you keep
building,
it?
you walk.
Well, it depends, this is a value judgment that we have to make a decision.
Yeah.
Do we want a community space? In which case, the depth they've shown is actually pretty, it's like something at the Circus Club. It's like one of
Right.
those kind of rooms off the
Tables
Circus
of
Club.
8.
Well, how wide is it now? How wide is it now?
15 feet.
You know, that's about 6 feet, so this is probably drawn close to 12,
12
I'd
feet.
imagine. And you could cut that in half and have something closer. Door swings are gonna swing out 3, right? So if you had an extra 3 or 5 feet outside of that.
Then it's just a place to stand during cocktails.
So you lose the community space with
The
the
6
French
feet
doors?
just becomes a
No, I
place to
think the
stand.
French doors limit, they limit the amount of openness as opposed to sliding glass doors. But again, it just depends on budget. I think if the idea is, if the design direction is keep the patio, we like it because it gives you folks a community space. It does a lot for us on the shading idea. Architecture gives you depth, right? It mimics this, not mimics, but borrows from this building in the most direct way, which is, that depth and experience. We can study the doors with Paul down the line and talk about the level of actual transparency and accessibility through them, and that could be a number of different ways.
Isn't that wall geodesic?
Yes,
So that's gonna be a big glare issue.
coming right in.
We just talked about that when the sun
Right.
was setting here, that depending on whether you're using French doors or sliding glass doors, shading it can get, to be a problem. Because sliding glass doors, roll down shades don't work very well together.
So I think that space does a lot for us.
So why don't we just have a quick, go ahead, Dee, yeah.
I just got started.
Okay, yeah. I'm sorry, yeah.
Okay. I really like the option 2 second story windows. I like the way they look. I'm not so convinced about option 1. What I don't like on either one of the options is the entrance from Fair Oaks. It seems to me it's not important enough, but I don't know that I want it to be important, but I want it to look more like a front door. The back of option 1 has 3 arches there, and I'm thinking, why can't we do something like that on the front? Because this lower stairway treatment with whatever you've got on it, to me, you're missing something. And that this front is just, it's too flat, it's just missing. Even just adding a fountain there isn't gonna save it.
Or what about twice of wide an arch? What if it were twice as wide?
Something bigger, yes, okay? I don't mind it being recessed, I don't mind that shit. I think that's actually good. I just think it's, and whether we can put the council chamber with the flat roof, sounds like a good idea, especially from a cost saving standpoint, but, I guess I gotta see that.
Probably just need some articulation, maybe a coping on the top of the wall.
Something
We're
to
not
make it-
seeing that in the detail.
Yeah, to make it look like it's not. And I guess that's it for right now. I don't like option 2 in the front really at all. Oh, that's option 1. I don't like option 1 in the front.
But Steve, were you saying that or Adam, that on option 1, on the back view, can you make that a flat roof?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what
It almost looks like it's flat
Yeah,
now.
it does.
Yeah.
It's really hard to see the incline to it, so.
The only person who would appreciate the hip on that roof is Adam. He stands about 6'6".
I would encourage you guys to look at the front door being twice as wide. The door at 245 Lytton is at least 15 feet wide. It's massive. It's got the 2 doors in the middle and big glass panes on each side and above it.
Yeah, to me, the front door entrance is something that it needs to make a nice statement that this is the entrance. And if we have to cut something else out a little bit or cut down on it, I think to me the front entrance, we're missing the front entrance now. It looks like this is the back way to the building.
Yeah.
And wood example is great. I was by the other night. Man, it's beautiful nighttime.
Yeah.
The light comes out of there. It's spectacular.
Can we just go back to talk about one of the issues that maybe it was Elizabeth that raised it, the part of the admin building that projects out towards Fair Oaks looks very bland. There's so much happening on the courtyard side. The building is just coming along fantastically on the courtyard side, but that front face is there's just not much there. It looks like we haven't got a chance to really study that section yet. I don't know, the windows, those 5 lower windows.
Maybe they could be arches. Maybe that could be an arcade.
Or when you see, when you look at a lot of the sort of Spanish revival buildings around here, you often see windows are placed in pairs. There'll be 2 windows rather than one larger window. I don't know, it's just something about that. That doesn't look like there's a lot of...
Excuse me, I think what it is that it's just the whole piece of it is too big and massive, and there's no real architectural style for the whole front of the building. And we're picking at little pieces instead of kind of designing a beautiful front of our building.
I think you're right.
There's nothing that we can do with the window treatment or anything. It's just that the admin piece is way too big. There's no grace. There's no balance. There's nothing. And that's why the door seems to be too small. We need double doors, but it's still going to be overpowered by this big chunk of an admin square. So that's my epiphany. That's my epiphany. Every time I look at what they bring back and they working on it, I think it just hit me that was what is missing. That's what's wrong.
So the general sentiment I'm hearing is try to carry the architecture from the back into the front, which means more arches. I think that's a big piece of it. Whether it's second floor or first floor, it means more depth to you're going to try to create some apparent depth to the skin in a few places. And then there's the left side of the building and the right side of the building don't go together. Elizabeth very clearly articulated. I don't think we can do much about the shading because it is a north. That door is north of that wing. That's kind of what it's going to be. But Dee Dee wants to get a fountain out there. That would help liven it up a lot, particularly a traditional fountain. But the left and the right have to go together better. Right now they kind of don't hang together.
Can I ask Adam one question? So I know we gave you the clear direction to go with a lot more glazing on the second floor. Do you think that's... Do you like that idea? I mean, is that what's throwing us off? That row of continuous glass, basically?
Yeah, my preference was for the prior versions. It had a lot more surface on it, actually, and there was a lot of opportunity for more delineation and scale change, but, we haven't looked at arches. There's another way to kind of get more architectural depth. I think it can be beautiful the way it's drawn. We wouldn't put something forward that we didn't think was in a schematic level, guys. We haven't talked about a lot of the details. From a schematic level, I think it can be beautiful. We're hoping that can be pretty open space up there, behind that wall. This is a 2-story building, and so you're going to be getting a lot of really kind of wonderful light at night coming out of that piece, right? I think adding a more openness on the ground floor would really help that. So that makes really wonderful sense. This is where people work, in that volume up there. Whether it's going to be private offices, which is what a lot of those spaces are right now, or we open it up into more flexible space where we hear a lot of comments on staff. But there's going to be a lot of light coming out of there. These are people are working in the evenings.
And what's to stop you from carrying the glass all the way across the second floor? Why do you stop? Where's that big gap
What's
there?
that big blob
Right here?
Yeah.
This is a staircase.
But is there any reason it can't be glass and open on the second floor?
There's a staircase right here, I think, so. You could actually add more glass to that, definitely, if you wanted to.
And then below the chief's office, what's there? where it's that big dead space again.
Dispatch, storage, or,
Couldn't they use
yeah, it's all the mechanical room for the
Could you do
radio
some cutesy
communications.
things in there to make it, you know, activate a little bit?
Yeah, you could.
I mean, detailing things that don't compromise their security, but
I think you could. That's kind of the northeast corner of the building. I think we've always, there's a landscape question here that we don't have the information on.
DD on a really traditional building, they might put a big wall frieze that's the background to a fountain.
Yes.
Would that, or do you really want the fountain up front, or could that be a really, just a big wall detail in front of a fountain thing?
It could,
Yeah, okay.
the wall's so bland.
So it could go from a negative to a huge positive.
Well,
It could become the stage for a fountain.
once we lost that one-story bustle in the front, you're starting to deal now with a two-story facade, right? So the one-story thing was what it was doing for us was giving us a little bit of a scale change, was giving us a garden wall. And then
That was ugly.
bring it down.
But it had a purpose.
It had a
So we-
purpose.
That purpose.
So
But
we
now
get
this
a
one, we've got a large two-story wall, and it's gonna take a lot more architecture to try to
Yeah,
alleviate.
George, please.
Along the frontage of the admin side there, Adam, I've seen on some buildings, and it probably lends itself here with the plate tile roof, like a faux articulation going all the way, horizontal line all the way across between the first story and the second story. Would that break it up any?
It's kind of like the stairway in option one.
Right, and John and I were kind of just talking about that a minute here. If you could take this idea, which people seem to like, which is kind of bringing back a little bit of that bustle that was on the front, which is really articulated in that stair, which is a lot like the button that people seem to gravitate towards right here. This seems to be a positive thing that the committee seems to like. We try to bring it over this side, which we thought helped break the elevation up, related a lot like to one of those precedents we brought forth to the committee. Is there a way to to work this so that you start to get, an integration of that? Help scale that down a little. That's one way to do it. Which
More
is
so on the admin
As
side.
well as
than I
on
was-
the admin frontage.
along here
Yeah, that's where I was thinking, on
Yeah.
the one on the right
to
hand
get
side.
more facade depth to that, similar to this.
Right.
We'd have to look at that. It's a big plan. We're really, really tight along this
Yeah.
edge.
The street
on
to
the street.
parking, sidewalk to
Yeah.
building's really tight.
Above the first story windows?
Yeah, he was talking about doing something with that space between the first and second story windows.
Right, and that's,
Well, that
that move.
tile you're seeing is there, because there's actually a wall separation about 4 or 5 feet.
I'm just talking right here.
Yeah.
Right.
And some sort of faux clay tiley breakup thing. I'm not an architect.
All words architects love to hear.
So let's start to help you guys, let's start to triage a little bit. Who wants for this stair, and we don't want to micromanage architecture, but it's a big thing you have to decide. Who really wants the expressed left-hand stairway to remain? Who really likes that and thinks it should stay? Does anybody feel pleased?
No.
So there's no emotion around that thing. It's just, it was a nice idea. We all asked for it last time. Seeing it now, it feels like that side of the building wants to be more unified with the right side of the building.
The
Yeah.
only thing it adds.
He's better architecture.
The roof adds a little bit of interest. It makes it not so boring, but I don't want the staircase there.
Yeah, I think that's right.
But I'm almost at George's point. In the back, what I like is how you go from the council chambers all the way to that second interior. That roof line just kind of folds together and creates some continuity across it. I just wish you could, like I think what George was saying there was pull in some of that detail through the front of the building.
Yeah, but it's recognized that wall is offset in the courtyard side.
Yeah.
I think if you put a colonnade across the first floor and you somehow dragged it, at least across admin, and then somehow on the PD side, you made an area of interest, whether it's a big fountain or something, that's your moment of public space and it's expressed in the building. And then the glass line didn't feel so disjointed between the two sides of the building, you'd be 90% there.
Increase the front door size.
Yes.
Yeah, double wide, yeah.
Steve,
Now there can be the double wide. Yeah, go ahead, Elizabeth.
can I just have one more comment?
Please.
One of the reasons that the admin side of the building got to be such a big block area is because we didn't want it jutting out into the courtyard in the back at all. And so they had to mass everything up, and they just clumped everything into this big mass at the front of the building. I know, you hate
You
me.
mean, could it be slid back?
Could it be the big block be slid off to the right a little bit to give the front entrance a little bit more breathing room, and set back just a little bit, just a little bit, so that it doesn't encroach and take up all the space like it did before when it was the gun thing or whatever it was. But, just a little bit, just to kind of massage that a bit. I don't know. And I know you've got all the floor plan programs.
I know exactly what you mean.
Do you know what
guys
I'm
follow
saying?
what she's talking about?
She's saying go back to an earlier scheme that we had.
It's not necessarily
No,
an
she's
earlier
saying
scheme.
lop off this piece of the admin building that sticks out and stick it on the back, stick it in the
Or
courtyard.
at least some portion of it.
Some portion of it, you don't want the whole
I don't
thing
think
flush. You don't want.
Elizabeth, you're not saying take
No,
off
yeah,
the whole
no,
piece. Yeah, take like
A little
3
bit.
feet
So-
off or something.
And just push the program back. Just slide the admin building back 3
Mm.
feet to make it not be such a deep shadow. Maybe
Yeah.
2 window widths or something.
What's back there? Who has a floor plan?
You're not really gonna. It's right here. You're not gonna leave
No,
it.
no,
Oh, in
what's
there?
inside?
Yeah, I don't
What's
know.
inside?
But you just slide the whole
Inside.
program.
Well, that's
Create a hallway coming out to the courtyard when you do that.
Well, you could take it. Yeah, yeah, you might too. Yeah.
And we might take up more community space in here.
But the whole lobby,
But you're
yeah,
gonna
it's
have
good
that-
point. The lobby would be bigger. It's what's gonna get bigger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you're gonna have that back weird courtyard again with the,
Yeah.
This is getting smaller.
We can't get everything we want.
so what's back there?
That's a tough one. Yeah.
I think it's a tough one. We're gonna get it moved back, and everybody's gonna say, oh, I think I want it back the other way.
But just remember, Elizabeth was the one who said, let's move the council chambers, and she was totally right. It's a much better project this way. So I hate to just say no. She really came up with that. Even when we were done, when we had all ready to go for the other one.
If it was slid, that might give you a little bit of room for some articulation on that facade,
Mm-hmm.
which you don't really have that room now.
Yeah.
It seems like that's something that, just looking through the elevation on the other side, I think we could probably resolve.
Because it would match up
You
with the
don't
arches
lose a
going
lot.
across.
You lose 10 feet of the courtyard, but you don't lose any depth or anything. It's not a meaningful
But
10
they
feet of
also have to
losing.
make sure that the floor plates.
Yeah, it's like the San Andreas fault. It's
Yeah,
moving
right.
and building, and what happens
Oh,
to the
please
program?
don't
Yeah,
say that.
yeah, okay. All right.
So if we did that, what are we talking about with the elevations, the Fair Oaks elevations?
They haven't
I think,
decided.
I think we all agree that it's a little bland, but is that just because there's not a lot of thought being given to the
Windows.
architectural detailing at this point?
I think they wanted to know where we ended up on the back. I think they really spent their architectural time on the back.
Yeah.
And we really love the left one in general. And I think, I'm feeling they're hearing us. And they know we want to see more of the back and the front, and we've talked about possible ways to do that.
Okay.
My instinct is to have faith. We're gonna meet again in
A week.
a week.
And they know where we live.
If you really look at the back of option number 1, the courtyard side, it's got the nice arches and windows above it, but the left-hand side on both stories, it's fairly plain.
Yeah, and
But
they
we're
need
not-
to,
We're not feeling
yeah.
it's plain.
Because
So-
all the other things is so active that you're kind of okay with that being plain,
Yeah.
because you need a break, like,
That
let's
the same
get the,
thing could happen on the front, and we'd be
yeah. So I think for a week from now, you're focusing on, it doesn't, so the things that we've accepted are, we're good with the incline, right? We like the Spanish style on the back. There's some discussion we still need to have about, are we gonna leave this community space under the arcade, or are we gonna make it a vestibule? So that needs to have a little discussion. And are we gonna include doors or not in the exterior? That can come way later.
Way later.
That can come in a month, right? Not a big deal. we're gonna cutesy it up at some point. You're gonna put the iron bars across some of the holes or something. You'll do some of the cutesy stuff they do. But we're really focused on the front.
I'm with you.
Right? The two big things we're focused on are how deep is the side arcade and how do you redo the front? I think.
Steve,
Yeah, go ahead, Elizabeth.
can I ask the committee one more question about the size of the council chambers?
Yes, please.
Because we were talking about the one that has the 5 arched portico looks too long, and you know, like the person in the last row is going to be too far away from the council chambers. So my question is, do we really need an 80-seat council chambers? Does it need to be as big as we have been designing it?
No.
I don't think so. I agree with Dee Dee.
How did we ever get
Well,
there?
we need you guys, that's a council question. So, what does council want?
We haven't asked council that question yet.
Okay, that would be a good one for you guys to come back on. Yeah. Because the question is, does it get shorter or do we make the arcade? It gets shorter because we need less seats, or it gets shorter in the arcade, gets skinnier, right? It's one or the other.
I think we've been holding 85 seats, because I think that came out of one of the meetings we had here.
It was
100.
5 meetings ago.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think we settled on a number, we've been designing to that number. We heard 100 at one time. I think then that got drastically cut back. I think we've heard 65, which is about the capacity of this room. And we seem to not.
But with this
So
side
we kinda
arcade,
moved it,
the
but
game
we-
changes.
Yep,
Because with
exactly.
the side arcade, you could put another 40 people or something out there.
Outside, when you need it.
When you need it.
So that-
It's covered, it may be cold, but it's covered. Yeah.
So knowing, and that's what, that's another.
We'll let you deal with that in the council.
Yeah, yeah.
Most figures.
What would be?
We'll go back to the park.
Being a large courtroom, how many people are designed
Well,
to
you
that?
could give us numbers on how many people are per row, and what, if one row were taken out, how much does that shorten the building? If 2 rows were taken out, how much does it shorten it, and how many seats do you then have?
Well, but you can look at that and
Yeah,
count it right now.
we can figure pretty easily.
Look, the difference between 65 and 80 is not all that much.
It's about.
And it might shrink, I mean, it might make a better looking building, and if we keep the outside colonnade, it
Yeah.
might really work fine.
Yes.
And if it really gets cold, somebody could donate heaters to put up in the colonnade, and we can
Mhm.
stay warm.
We could put heaters in there. Not a horrible idea. Or at least put the plumb on.
Yes.
But we do that after we get our
Yes.
LEED Platinum certification.
We don't have natural gas.
Yeah, no natural gas, that's right.
That's all the questions I have, Steve.
Okay, so let's just talk quickly then about the arcade. I think this just has to be a show of hands. Who likes the arcade deep enough, like it is now, to have tables in there for a sit-down event? Versus
Just extra
who wants it
chairs.
to go half as wide, it'll just be a place to stand for a cocktail party or smoke a cigarette, which you're not supposed to do inside the public building. So who likes it the depth it is now? Okay, that's,
The whole thing is gonna be
okay.
And then we can put chairs.
And Elizabeth, are you voting for that one, or are you waiting for the other one?
She said no.
No? Oh, everybody here voted for the deep one.
But you can't.
Except maybe Rose, I couldn't tell.
Nope. 7 zip.
Okay, but Elizabeth, do you really prefer the arcade to be slimmer?
Do I prefer them to be slimmer?
Or do you like the arcade, the deep one that you could actually use for an event?
So my question again about the using the arcade as an event, I think that possibility is slim. I think that as an overflow for council meetings or as an overflow for an event that's inside the council chambers is a possibility, but to have like dinner tables or something else out there for a specific event under that arcade, I don't see that happening. My personal feeling, that's my personal opinion, and I don't want to design an arcade
So how
for
deep
that
would you
purpose.
go? How deep would you have the thing be?
Well, I think it's 12 feet now. I think 6 to 8 at the max. And I'd like to see it shortened. I don't think that 5 porticos.
So, Adam, if we went 4 porticos
Excuse me.
and cut out those seats, I don't, what's that, 2 rows?
2 rows are 20 seats.
And cut out 20 seats, which size of that portico would help make up for that when we need it?
I think that would mean about trying to bring the building back, which I think is gonna help the site a lot. It means growing it a little wider, calibrating the saddlebags, and reducing that, similar to what Elizabeth is saying, between, she said 6 to 8, we'll look at it and we'll test it against the capacity of seating. And we'll
They can pick up like 2.
You pick up
per
6
row.
rows times 2 seats, or about 12 seats, so it'd go to 72.
All right, can I make a suggestion, you guys? My gut is, our committee's supposed to focus on architecture.
Yeah.
And my instinct is we should go back, the council can debate if they want this to be a public space or not, and widen enough for events.
Yeah, I don't think.
But I think the architecture is gonna look more or less the same. It's gonna be very minorly twisted, and I think we can do our job and move it on.
Steve, I would absolutely
Okay.
agree with that, but I just wanted to add one thing. Dee Dee, what was that event that we went to with the big house, PPG's event?
Yes.
The PPG event. At that particular event, a number of the residents that were there, that were talking about the project, were energized by the fact that they could use this as a sense of space and a venue for their activities. So that's the only reason I think.
We heard the same thing in my house too.
Yeah.
But the council
Yeah.
chambers is still coming up as a venue opportunity.
Right.
Yeah.
For the community.
That sounds
I can
like
rent it for my own party.
Right.
That you can
Yeah.
then, you can open those
Lot of
doors up,
Yeah.
and you can spill out, you may not have 5 tables, but the space will feel bigger, you can
thought
spill
the
out to
space
the
was
courtyard
smaller.
on that seat. The
Yeah.
point is,
Yeah.
it's more about,
Yeah.
access than,
Right.
Like the circus,
Building a
they
giant,
like 5 spaces.
porch
They
wall
always
there.
rent it. They rent it,
because
they
that patio will be
supports the
People
club
are
a lot.
excited for the community
Yeah.
really, really nice.
aspect.
Okay.
I think we shouldn't be micromanaging the design
No.
of this portico.
I think we should focus on the exterior, and then the council can debate. We can say to them, please consider the depth of this arcade if you want it to be a rentable, usable space or not.
Right.
So we'll focus on
You
our.
want it to look symmetrical. I mean, you want it to look design, and so that I don't have a problem with the 12 feet if it's gonna work. But if you scooch the council inside over a little bit to shorten that, I don't know.
Okay, and then John and Adam on the front, so I think you've heard us there. On the front, can you tell us what you've heard us say about the front, so we don't have to repeat it or send you a memo or something?
So what we heard pretty clearly is that, this stair idea, right, which is kind of, doesn't have a lot of gravity on the community, right? And that the size of, the depth of this door leans in the right direction, but it may mean amplifying that door a bit to get a lot more transparency, a better indoor experience. That might help at elevation. And then this is still a question mark, the architectural, the 2-story architectural wall here. Are there ways to get more interest, material, depth, and transparency to play on? It's going to be basically balancing out with a program behind it. But looking at that, and then thinking that on this side, the community feels that this is a pretty bland wall on there, and that what might help that would be to take the mass of that volume, scoot it into the courtyard. I heard 6 feet roughly. We'll look at it to see how that goes into the courtyard a bit to reduce its presence on Fair Oaks, which I think would be great. And then start to really kind of get some better visual interest, maybe in introduction of arches, or something that might start to hark back to the elevation that we're looking at here, the energy of this wall.
Or they might be on the first floor.
I beg your pardon?
They might be on the first floor.
They'll be on the first floor, but I think the thought was that energy feels right,
Mhm.
right? And that the quietness there is too much.
Mhm.
So is there a way to kind of start to stitch those two
Yeah.
together? Which John and I were just
Historically,
kind of
they'd be on the first
having a
floor.
little
Yeah,
moment
I
here.
think so.
When you push that volume in, it'd be really, really wonderful
And
to
that's
get more depth
a
there. If
little
that
bit
volume does
arch.
slide this way, the way Elizabeth is suggesting,
Yeah.
it might help actually engage this portico, this lower roof, which everyone also seems to have a lot of positive feeling. So there could be a really nice tie-in from there. You get 6 feet of depth, which is actually about that dimension. So it might help end it in a nice way, and we'll look at trying to get a better entrance experience here, and we'll study that side.
And you
again.
might carry that little hip roof to the front. You might have a 2 foot.
That's gonna be a challenge. Well, yeah.
Yeah, it's a big
Absolutely,
structural,
because
yeah,
it's
you might, yeah.
It's a sheer, it's two
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah,
And,
go ahead.
right now, we're trying to get the DNA right. And I think there's a lot of architectural elements that we'll be working with Paul and this committee on in terms of what
Okay.
we can do to get in there, the amount of transparency on that second floor.
Okay, Dee, go ahead.
Adam, I'm just looking at this entrance, this back entrance to the council chambers, which I really like. What would happen if something like that mimicked on the front of the building? I know we have windows above it, and we don't really have a place on either side of the door you have drawn, but that looks more like an entrance.
I think we had some earlier versions on the prior schemes where we had there was a lot of transparency here. And I think we can start to think about the scale of those two, as you're suggesting, and how that might start to echo between the two to signify entry more than we're showing them.
What about a peak to that roof right over the entrance?
You might add another layer of complexity that I'm not.
You wouldn't see that.
No, I think what's good, I think the beauty of this is looking at the edge of a bunch of barrel tiles and that line, which is like this. I think another framing element causes a lot of complications with it. And that would be my first gut. I think it can be handled
Scale,
and
thickness.
and thickness and depth. And that's a bigger.
And so for now, you guys are coming back in a week, so just to reduce things that we don't need all the detailing about, ignore it. If you can color up flimsies, you could come back with flimsies of the front elevation and a modification to this arcade in the back. You don't need to come back with redetailed, I mean, you can be pretty simplified with the presentation, it'd be 4 or 5 pages.
And we heard flat roof.
I think we can't even see the difference between the two here, yeah.
That's the biggest deal tonight.
Yeah.
Okay.
It kind of gets hidden because your eye goes to the council chambers and to
Right.
the other roof. And you're never really in a place where you're gonna stand and see the other roof, except maybe when you're driving by on our future to be named street. In a double-decker bus, yeah, you're just not gonna see it. It's never quite the perspective you get.
DD lane.
Okay, great. All right, are we good with that? Thank you. All right, so we're moving on to naming conventions, which to help you raise money.
Brief staff report.
Please.
All right, Mr. Chair and committee, the council generally supports the creation of a donation wall or the use of plaques, bricks, and benches. They did caution against proliferating of plaques throughout the entire facility and Civic Center complex. And they wanted to make sure that the placement of those plaques, big plaque, small plaque, big brick, small brick, should relate to the amount of donation itself. They felt that there are also areas that should not be considered for naming. Those are the interior spaces of the administration and police buildings, primarily the staff function areas, conference rooms, and things like that. The council felt that it would not be appropriate to name the council chambers or any building themselves. They felt that you could create themed rooms within the library. That was totally appropriate, provided those were significant contribution amounts. Felt that you could create donation walls and things like that within those lobby spaces and open spaces within the buildings. They discussed the naming of any identified street segment within the Civic Center, primarily that one between Fair Oaks and Ashfield. That was something they would consider at a significant contribution level. It was suggested that that could potentially be around a $10 million contribution. Certainly the naming of outdoor spaces and plaza areas and garden areas were supported. So that what they would like to see is from Atherton now the Civic Center Committee, kind of a donation checklist or handout for feedback that provided what donation level or contribution amount related to which particular element of the project, donor levels basically. And they'd like to see that, recognizing that the final authority for policy decision there rests with the council.
Great.
The report.
Thank you. Dee, you're the likely person to comment on
Meeting on
this.
the 15th, we may be leaving stuff a little bit loose to see where donors are comfortable. I'd like to do a blah. And the street we will try not to sell for less than $10 million. We already have a couple of people in mind, and I don't know that we're going to have a complete complete list that the bathroom is X, I'm just using these as examples. Or the mechanical room is Y and, you know, all of that. We need to be a little more flexible to see how what the donors are interested in.
Great. What's the next step?
Can I make a comment?
Please.
So, in kind of thinking about these naming opportunities and, being at the council meeting and reviewing it with everyone, it occurred to me that, naming, because there was a lot of discussion about the naming of the streets, and I had to explain that we're not taking existing streets and renaming it, and that's it's like the new street that's being created inside the Civic Center, and the value of that, and other things. That if we could put a significant value, like Dee Dee said, on like the naming of, say, a street, and to give it to one particular person instead of diluting the value of these naming rights by offering multiple pieces to be named, and then trying to just name key specific things that for a high value that puts a lot of value on it, because not everybody's going to get that kind of naming rights. And then for the mass donors, you do other things like garden features and garden events and benches and pavers and things, and the donor wall. Everybody loved the donor wall, and people had been in the Clark building, and they understand, Dee Dee, and I indicated that something that you had talked about in the very beginning. So to that extent, I think that I'd like to, put it back to the Atherton Now Committee to kind of think about that as, when you put some values on these things. So.
Thank you. Any further comment? I think for this committee, our job for this committee is just to make sure that the architects are thinking about where a donor wall goes, how it looks, and that's where our input will come as a committee, I think. The other thing I just noticed sitting here while we were listening is that front door on that council chambers, particularly if it moves back about 5 feet or 8 feet, you're gonna drive down Ashfield and you're gonna be looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's gonna be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It's really gonna be something. And when you come in from Fair Oaks on unnamed new street, $10 million+ donor street, you're gonna more or less see the other door of this building.
Exactly.
So coming and going,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna be looking at something that looks like that when you're internal this side.
Right.
It's kind of cool. Yeah. That's gonna feel like the front door for most people, because that's where they're gonna come. Yeah, and that's business, and this is community events. Yeah. So anyway, all right. So I think we're closing that. We're moving on to ad hoc committee reports. Library. Anything you wanted to report, Rose? It shows no action.
I was just going to notice that we did meet with the library staff last week, so we talked about an hour and a half as the first kickoff to go do the floor plan walkthrough. So they're kind of looking at rooms and spaces to see how things are arranged to make sure operationally it works. And then we'll follow that up with a meeting up with WRNS to kind of keep working through the program.
And when will the library ad hoc committee have something to talk about or get involved with? Like, where do you see that happening? Because I think there's some redefinition going on of what the committees are doing. When do you see that occurring? When would they get involved?
Gordon, or George, the role of the library committee, I guess, is what more would be left in scope.
Yeah, I think they need to know. I think they need to know what's the expectation of that committee.
I'm not sure there is a whole lot more. I think Tom's got the footprint in the interior side nailed down. I think they've talked with the committee about what the inside looks like in terms of programming. The outside architecture, that would be where they might be involved with. I would also suggest maybe they would have an involvement in talking about the outdoor spaces around the facility, but that again is working with Tom in the library.
So like in our meeting, we talked, the conversation happened in here also, the far end of the library building, there was a patio area, and the question, is that part of the library or is it part of the community? So that's part of the conversations we're having, is, you know, has it got walls around it so it's patron area or is it community area? Questions about how this building gets integrated in with the library, how it's gonna get programmed. I'm off meeting with the planning director last week to talk about code changes we're gonna have to do to the zoning code, general plan, potentially to deal with the cafe and, you know, being able to do stuff. So we're working our way through the mechanics around that. I think as we find answers to a lot of that sort of stuff, there may be a report back to things, but I'm asking this.
Right. Rose, Rick isn't here tonight, but what do you see it differently? Like, what would you imagine the committee would do going forward?
I thought that we would be meeting with the staff and doing this in conjunction with them, so this is obviously a change. You know, there's some issues coming up in outreach that I think need to be communicated to you, you know,
Okay.
whatever you're doing. And if you want to circumvent that and make that, you know, directly with the outreach people, that's fine too. I mean, I guess the question is, what are we doing? I mean, what, can you help
Right.
us define it?
Well, that's part of what I'm asking. I don't know the history of the committee of what its charge was to go of kind of have we reached up, because we have done program, we've done architecture. I think everybody's generally happy with the building. So it's now of kind of getting his staff to go through and, because they haven't done this yet, is to go through and see how the program is in that building. You know, is the children's area in the right end of the building?
How do we as CCAC find out what you're doing?
Yeah.
We can report out here for certain, but there's no
Well,
committee involvement.
And keep in mind that we've been stripped of internal, unless it's public space, libraries different
Which,
that way.
that one, yeah, is a lot
I guess
of
it's all
public
public.
space.
But I think what should happen, my instinct is what should happen is you, Rose, and Rick should get together with Tom and have
Kinda
just an
map
off
that out.
meeting and say, what is the role of that committee?
Yeah.
So that we're not wondering.
Yeah,
And
I
we're
don't
not
wanna
like,
go
why
through
weren't-
and play
why
hide.
weren't they invited to that meeting, or what, you know, you guys work it
Yeah.
out and come back with here's what we think it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think one of the other things that I made, since you brought it up, would be when the landscape architecture gets melded with the building architecture, I think that might be an appropriate place, because that starts to draw in the public concepts. So that might be the right time, because then you look at the outdoor patio, as Joe said.
What's different, though, is this committee was different. They really got into programming. They went all over the place. Look at libraries. They deeply got into square footage, much more than any of the rest of the committees, even the town center task force or anybody else. We never got into police department design, right? We didn't. But these guys really did. And so they may have a different, and I think Rick is on the council. He can, you know, decide what the council can talk about, what do they want the role to be, and is it friends of the library? Is it library staff? Is it this committee? Like who's in the
Yeah,
kitchen?
that's the part I'm
Yeah.
kind of trying to get up to speed.
They're a
and
little
not
different than the other ones. Yeah,
leave people out, but
they're a little different animal than the other committees.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not parallel to the other ones. Outreach, and then Paul.
Yeah, well, we have a mock-up of the mailer that Teresa says would be mailed out on February 3rd. My question, George, is the mock-up here with the design, are we able to change this at this point?
No, we should already send it out, that's what we have.
Okay, it's what we had, and that's what we had to work with at the time.
What a bummer, because the new one's so much better.
Yeah, it is, but,
You gotta stop somewhere, get a flyer.
and we're, you know, otherwise we're gonna be too late with the
It's already gone, huh?
with the mailing.
Oh.
It's
And
not till the 20, it went a month early.
so that's what we had at the time, and we had to move forward and kind of get this thing going in order to get the message out in a timely fashion.
Well, thank you.
We'll have 3 banners out. I don't know if you got Teresa's email a little bit earlier today. So we'll have the banner at Marsh and Middlefield. We have one for Watkins Avenue near the park, and one for Alameda Atherton Avenue in that little kind of dead space. That is actually a pretty good idea. I think Gary mentioned that. And that's so busy in the morning and so busy in the afternoon, people stop there for a 4-way stop. It'll be noticed. Teresa updated the Facebook page, and she's going to
Who owns that property in the Alameda and Atherton Avenue?
I'm not sure, we didn't discuss
Did
that.
we make sure that we get permission
No,
from
the town has right of way there at the southwest and northeast corners.
That white picket fence is the town's.
Okay, well, let's, and just, it might
That's
be
a good
nice to
point.
talk to the property owners and just say, we are doing,
We'll do
Good
that.
point.
I don't wanna make neighbors.
Yeah, we don't need to.
Well,
make
given
any-
this is a month out, will you be sending out any more? There'll be other things going out, right, digitally and things?
Digitally, the town's email list, the Facebook
It
page,
should be nice to get updated.
and
Which one?
we'll try to do that.
Oh, the left one, of course, no, this one. I think the rear view.
Just the
of
courtyard,
left
just the
one.
courtyard view is all we need.
Yeah.
That's the one, man. That's not
Less
gonna
is
change
more.
a whole lot, that's
Alright,
not.
so if we send out, because this is critical.
Yeah.
because it
With the
does create
grammatical change.
confusion
Yeah, yeah.
to the public, so
Let's-
which one do we wanna use?
Option one,
Courtyard
rear
is
view.
option one.
Yeah,
Courtyard view.
courtyard of option one,
Okay.
Yeah.
absolutely.
And the
Would you
grammatical
send me
change.
that so I can start looking on our website and using it?
Yeah, look at this compared to
What's
that.
that?
What's that?
Oh, no, I don't.
Yeah, so I'll get JPEGs
You want me to
for all
get
those,
mine?
and I'll email it to you.
Are you kidding?
Uh, this is-
And then Dee Dee needs a nice version of this to start using.
I need
That one right there.
Yes, right there,
Yeah.
right now, please, thank you.
So we'll update the Facebook page. Also, she's gonna be using the townwide email, the nextdoor.com site for the whole town. And if any of you are next door, I would encourage you to use it and kind of send out your own little personal message about the meeting, February 22nd.
Guide the discussion,
I'm sorry?
guide the discussion.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And we still need to get together to kind of talk about programming that meeting on February 22nd and how we're going to move forward on the meeting. I don't know if we'll talk after the meeting if we can do it later this week or probably next week
Okay.
and come back on February 8th with a plan for the meeting as well.
I was asked this afternoon if somebody who's interested is not available on the 22nd, where will they be able to go to see
My
the
brain
show?
wants
And I suggested
That's a good
that you
question.
guys think
Well,
about
Dee Dee's been on
whether
it
it's
for a
the
while.
library or the post office or where it is.
Well, and Dee Dee, to that point, in order to publicize the meeting, we talked about poster boards and kind of a display with artist renderings of the project in the town center lobby, in the library, and there was a third location, I can't
Some
remember.
places
was on
open
the
more
program.
often so
Right.
they can go in and see it.
Okay.
Right,
No, she was on
no,
the
it's a great
script.
point. And when we get together again, we have to talk about putting those displays together too,
So let's
to make sure that we get those out. I don't know if you want to add anything, Gary, or
No, this one's
Christine?
This one's gonna be
Displays?
very important.
Displays of the,
Very soon.
oh,
Yeah.
okay,
Right.
Much
yeah.
sooner than this one.
But I'm not supposed to be doing budget.
No, it's gonna come up pretty tall. What's that, what can we, no, trust me,
Oh, yeah.
they're gonna get it. Okay.
And
Oh,
we also
sorry,
talked,
you guys-
and that was Steve's idea too, about the phone tree. I think you
Yeah.
sent that out in an email.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, and again,
Let
Without-
them do it.
without checking up on anybody, if you can just kind of get on the horn a little bit and call up your neighbors and acquaintances and give it that personal touch.
If you can email us something,
Correct it.
because the other version of phone tree is email, right, it's just easier.
Yeah.
Send us what you want us to forward to people that we can say, hey, this is a great opportunity to come see where we are.
Okay,
And if nothing else, they'll look at the thing we forward them.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
that's
say,
true.
oh, Atherton's moving forward, and then nice. But that we could update, this could get updated with that
Mhm.
Yeah.
image.
Yeah, that would
And
be-
it could be in color, because it's nothing to print, it's digital.
right.
So with the
If-
newer drawings and the different
Yeah, so I'll work with Teresa to
Wording.
cut in the newer drawings, so at least we can
And
use
then-
for email.
wording.
Swap around, we'll fix the hat as.
The thing you're gonna email might just wanna be one page too, because it's just a PDF. I mean, it
Right,
doesn't need the
exactly.
fold and
No,
all that
exactly,
stuff,
yeah.
yeah, okay.
Perfect.
All right, great.
Anything else, Christine? Did you want to add
No,
anything?
that's it.
Okay.
Okay, so we're moving on to budget, and what I've noticed on budget is it has different committee members than I remember, so we can talk about that. But the question I have for you, Joe, is what does the council think our job is on this? Particularly as Paul's gonna, when we get the next schematic,
Right,
Paul's gonna start doing his pricing.
yeah, so once we've
And-
gotten it, I've finished with schematic design, so
Yeah.
I'm hoping next week we go through and say we're done with architecture, turn these guys loose to turn.
Yeah,
Paul's.
we're done on, big picture architecture, yeah. Do you want, it would seem to me that would be the appropriate time to have the budget ad hoc committee that I thought was the three of us. I thought it was the same as program, because, Dee Dee was on program committee where we did square footage a long time ago. Yeah, okay. But I thought the three of us were the budget ad hoc committee, Clive, Steve, and Rose. And if Elizabeth wants to join us, it's absolutely wonderful and fine and encouraged. But I thought that was that committee. And I'm imagining that you want us to be meeting with you and Paul and Gordon as Paul's trying to determine adults in value engineering. I'm gonna guess that's when you want us to meet with you, but I just wanna know if you do.
Well, that's
I
one
wanna
of the
feel
things
responsible for it if you don't.
is trying to figure out how, and it's kind of following up on the conversation last meeting about the project management committee. As we go through and start working through changes, how that's gonna work. Because if we're gonna go through and do like change orders coming back through the committee or even the subcommittee, that isn't gonna work, just from a timing standpoint. So how to,
No, this is
Gotcha.
just budget. This is,
Right.
this is called, you've just alerted us, we may be 10% over the
Yeah.
10% over budget.
Mhm.
And we've asked Paul, can you come back with waste value engineering, if that's the case?
Right,
And then we will forward it to council and say,
here's, yeah, we think these make sense.
Here-
Yeah.
here's your menu. But this committee might be helpful in thinking through what
No,
the
I
value
think that's
engineering
true.
is. Okay, so that's, but if you want us, that's it, but if you doesn't, I don't wanna try that. I'd rather do this in public, like, do you want us or not? If you do, then we'll meet with you, and if you don't, we're gonna cross this off and go away.
No, I think that's why I raised the budget, because I want to make sure that we're thinking about that.
Okay.
And so, again, part of what the role of the
Careful what you
subcommittees
ask
have been around keeping us on budget and what is a
Okay.
reasonable budget.
Well,
I think-
Joe, let me help answer
Yeah.
that particular question.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
There is a role for the project management of the budget committee in pre-bid, up to pre-bid.
Yeah.
So helping inform all of those value-added engineering things and
Yeah,
architectural.
well, where it's
decisions
really
and
impacting the
adults.
design,
But the
in a big way,
design,
yeah.
Totally there. But once it goes out to bid and we get a contractor and we're out, we're talking change orders, the only time you're gonna see it is when it's something big.
Okay, yeah,
All
yeah,
the
yeah,
stuff,
okay.
you're not gonna see it.
All right, so let us know if you can tell us offline when you think that moment's gonna come.
Yeah.
Because, like, ski week's coming, that's like, if you can, so we can try to get,
Be careful.
no, just so we can get scheduled. I'm just
Right.
thinking a lot of people with, okay. All right, then project management, I don't think there is, I think those, it sounds like that committee's gonna have nothing for a while, so cross that off. And then green building, that committee, is that ripe to start meeting, or what's happening with
We
that group?
met
Right.
in December before Christmas, and I thought that the next step was to create this, and this is in
The
the next
matrix.
2 months, that matrix in order to feed into what MAC 5 is doing on the budget estimate.
Right,
So that hasn't been done. We don't,
Right.
what happened to this matrix that we're presenting to all of us in order to feed to Paul? I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
so
not.
we have the matrix, and part of the challenge piece is that they are connected, so we talked about operable windows. What I think the whole committee might benefit from is the presentation that we had at the subcommittee. So that's what I was talking, getting about before the meeting, is there some value to actually bring that presentation to this group, so understand the ramifications, because, as we say, when operable windows or inoperable windows changes the whole mechanical design. The whole decision points around the ground-based heat pump, and does that work for what we're trying to do in the buildings, and does it work for the library, does it work for both buildings? The question the council asked was, what's the return on investment? Right now, I don't know the return on investment, because I don't know the cost to go the add-all to put these pieces in and out. So this is, I need to go through and sit down with Paul, and is to kind of really dig into that matrix, and I have not done it yet.
so where do you see the committee reactivating?
I think it's gonna be probably 2 months down the road, realistically.
It won't come during the VE.
Some of it will
It
probably,
has to.
but probably not 100%.
It has to.
It
Yeah,
would
it's
seem
a-
like it would come down,
Yeah,
yeah.
it has to.
Well, it's a matter of how fast we're getting the list of, okay, here's where the budget is, and here's what would take out as options to take out of that, and how long that will take to happen.
Right.
That's my only concern, is that there's a substantive amount of.
So what would be really helpful for maybe next time, since we're meeting in a week, is for staff to think about these committees and say, here's where we're gonna need you guys. Here's what we
Yeah.
think.
Well, that's what I
Yeah.
was trying to do with
Yeah.
the looking forward for the committee meetings,
Yeah,
was even to start thinking about that, and this was a little bit of my brainstorming without having the benefit of talking to these guys. So they were already going, oh, we can't do that.
but we feel a little reactionary now.
Yeah.
You're getting up to speed, Joe.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
new. you're taking over, but it would help us to forward planning and say, here's what I see, green building meeting, here's what I see, budget ahead of meeting, outreach is
Yeah.
working, they're on it, they've got a task. Library's meeting again, or it's not, we're done with, you know, like, we just need a roadmap.
Yeah, we just need to know when we're
Yeah.
through.
Right,
You know,
when we put a
we're-
fork in it, we're done.
That's it.
Well, and I'm trying to go through and manage the consultants so that, because it's expensive to have them here every
Right,
meeting, and
right,
especially now that we've gone to twice a month. You know, we're burning through a lot of
Yeah.
hours, and that's not in their
No,
scope.
we know that.
So I'm trying to go through and figure out, you know, when is it relevant for Paul to be here versus WRNS versus the landscape, and, you know,
Well,
still sorting that out a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah,
most, but-
for the green committee, we didn't finalize design too. The
Right.
architecture had to be complete, whereas the solar, you know, have pedestals for solar, you didn't know that before. We wanted
Well,
to
the
make
PV
sure
was kind of the easy piece. It's really the mechanical is the one
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
that is giving me my stomach to turn.
Right.
That what it's doing
Well,
right now is just how that mechanical is really gonna go through and operate, and whether we can achieve what we want to within how the budget's set up. And just, you know, how do we get that?
And well, how do you see that decision being made moving forward? Because at that meeting, I thought it was pretty productive. It was like a 2-hour meeting
Oh, it
we
was
had in
phenomenally
December.
productive.
We made, you know, as a group, we made some firm decisions, no black water, da-da-da. Okay, so the next step was to bring the information back here, have the matrix, have the cost benefit, and have the decision made,
Right.
not necessarily made, but have an understanding
Have information,
of the
make a
cost,
decision.
you know, of what is there, and then integrate that with Paul's work so that we can make a sound decision on what's workable.
And that's the piece where really, I don't have the numbers to go through and
Okay,
give you information to help make some of those decisions. So that's the piece I'm trying to chase down is how do we go through and really better understand the cost implications to go down a certain path, 100%, or go down that path 80%, both on a near-term capital cost as well as on an operational cost for the life of the building,
okay.
and being able to.
So Paul, I mean, how can you move forward with budget without this information, or what do you need?
Really can't.
Okay, that's what I
We have to
thought.
have, you know, a plan that's somewhat fixed so that the estimators can quantify what we're talking about. And there also has to then be the narrative that goes along that from all of the other disciplines who are sort of on hold until things get settled down. So we need their input, and that's gonna take.
Because that was part of what Paul's talking about at the beginning is what's included in the building.
Right,
You know, what is that base level of, mechanical heating, cooling,
right.
and
So
we have to arm wrestle around
What
it.
we're hearing from all of this little committee work out there is nothing's moving forward until we come up.
Correct.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm gonna address the schedule. So next week, you have your meeting architecture cost update. Will you just give us an update?
Yeah.
For next
Well.
Monday? I mean, there's nothing else to add at this point.
At this point, that's as much as we know right now.
And so is this project, we hope will get passed on after the February 22nd meeting for the community? We might pass it on to the council, and then for the March council meeting. And so at that point, there'll be a cost estimate,
Yes.
okay? And at that point, Atherton now will review that estimate and we'll go on,
Funding.
hopefully.
Yeah.
So we're talking about March.
But we're still doing the February 1st meeting.
Well, that's,
Oh, yeah.
I guess one question is
Why?
February 1st and February 8th, is there,
Okay, why do we have 2 weeks?
Yeah.
should we consolidate one of the two? Because they both will get me to the February 20th council meeting. It's,
17th
or 17th.
Well, the rate we're going.
What do you recommend?
Making all this stuff, we ought to,
I mean, the big picture is you're trying to get, the psychology we have now is we're trying to move it to council.
Right.
And so how are we gonna help you move it to council?
Well, I think.
And that's really
was a
staff's,
big
because it's a
piece.
staff-led project now, so we're really assisting.
Yeah.
So do you wanna meet on the 1st? Do you wanna meet on the 8th? Do you wanna meet both? Like, what makes
From a product
sense?
standpoint, the 1st or the 8th?
Rather, go with the 8th. The 8th would be better. We have one scheme. I just want to, we have one idea. We're still not generating thousands of ideas in the world. Consolidate it to one building, one idea. It can't, so for us, the direction of the committee is pretty clear. We're going to be studying that front elevation, but there's no other, we have a flat roof, there's enough that it's kind of settled. But I think the discussion, a comprehensive discussion with the green features would be really wonderful because it's all tied together. You keep, it's a holistic approach, so it'd be nice to have one conversation.
So we go through and do what we did for the Green Committee
Right.
on the 8th with the, here's, spend like a half hour on architecture, say, we're good, and then let's spend an hour.
I think it's probably an hour, but
Yeah,
no,
I was gonna say,
there are 9 of us, and everyone's gonna say something.
Optimistic. Manage expectations.
Okay,
Nothing on the first.
So we,
So we're looking at the 8th?
that's what I put out there.
So no
are you
first?
comfortable with that, George?
Okay.
Okay. We just don't wanna fail to meet another deadline, like the 22nd
Right.
or something.
Yes.
So then,
Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
Follow up on that, so looking towards the 22nd, the outreach meeting, I just wanna be clear about what,
What all the outreach committee needs from the architects. So we're gonna get the JPEGs of the new elevations. We'll have stuff cycling through for the 8th that we can go through and have for the meeting itself.
those green features, are
Yeah.
wonderful to be part of that story for that.
And what I've explained to Adam and John is that the thought is of having 3 or 4 stations around the room with the
Right.
boards, that with the elevations, floor plans would allow kind of a small group, committee members, consultants, staff to go through and manage each of those, be able to, on a small one-on-one or, kind of level.
Right, so if we nail down the program of that meeting in the next week or so and have that ready to go
Right.
for you guys on February 8th, that would be fine.
Yeah.
Okay,
And this would be a sound time.
is that's,
That's enough time
And
to.
we're imagining a level like this, when we say the elevations, the 2 views, a view from the courtyard, a view from Fair Oaks,
Yeah.
some plans, which kind of
Mhm.
show the layout,
mhm.
some narrative on the green features that are critical to the building.
I think we're mostly there.
So just for the agenda, it's, the 8th, I think we don't need program management subcommittee role. I think that can fall off. I
Okay.
think it's not remotely important yet. And then CCA meeting architectural cost update, we won't have a cost update on the 1st, will we? Okay, or the 8th.
We may have a dialogue about some of those green features, but there won't be a bottom line on the whole project.
So on the 22nd, when we're going to the public, we're gonna have a design that we might not be able to afford. That's just, that's the one thing to really understand.
And, I meant, that's gonna be really hard to present this design that could be over.
And then
So maybe
back
we don't
off.
talk about cost if we have nothing coming in.
Correct.
Okay,
Until it's been,
okay.
Well, I mean, the question's gonna come up, how much will this cost, and we're still pricing it out, we're gonna reduce it as necessary.
Well, value engineer is necessary,
Engineer.
yeah, okay. And the landscape ad hoc committee green building,
So that was Elizabeth and I were gonna go and work on kind of drafting that out a little bit. We haven't had a chance to
okay,
talk.
my only fear is it could take a half hour.
Yeah, so it's,
And the green building is probably
the green
more
building is
urgent.
most important, the architecture is most important.
Uh-huh, and then, okay. So, but you might just wanna talk about that offline, and think about
Yeah.
when that timing is in it. Okay, all right, I think we're done. Anybody have anything else?
So we still keeping the first?
No,
The first is gone, we're meeting on the 8th.
no, the first.
The first is gone, and we just have, we reduced the agenda. It's
Yeah.
basically green building and design.
Yeah.
Most likely, okay. All right,
thank you.
have a motion to adjourn?
Some of
Thank you. All in favor?
Great job.
Bye. Good night.